Hello and welcome back, this is ProTaleDev, back with another Dungeon Architect video, and this time I'm going to show what I've done in the last 2 to 3 weeks. Now, I'm a little bit ill at the moment, so I'm going to try and speed this along. It's not going to be too long of a video because, yeah, I'm just not feeling great. However, I have done all of the maps, and that's what this video is mostly going to be about. I said that in the last video I wouldn't do another video until at least I've done all the maps, and that is now finished. So I'm going to go over the very brief things that I've changed first, but I'm not actually going to show them. I'm just going to go down the list that I've got on my right screen here. So I've extended the time on the island for the guests. The resources no longer go into a minus, and the gold. So essentially, before, if a guest had taken some gold, some maintenance, sometimes it would go below 0. That doesn't happen anymore, so we shouldn't get any more minuses, hopefully. Now I've also fixed a bug with the upgrades on buildings where they weren't reaching to level 3. The production speed has been increased for all production buildings, even more so because it still wasn't enough. Shelter design has changed slightly, so it's rather than just it being a boring box, now the building has a little slight changes. I can just show what the building looks like, essentially right here. Yep, nothing too different right there. The turret ammo now does more damage, so it definitely kills them. Before it was just not doing enough damage, but now it does a lot more damage to the monsters when they spawn during a raid. I've made it so that the shelter won't close at the end of a disaster trigger, so when the disaster ends, on any disaster, the shelters, depending on the disaster, it would close them, but it wouldn't reopen them. And it's the same with the island overall. It would also close the island during a disaster. Now it's up to you to close the island and to open the shelter or leave it open. It's completely up to you. Another thing is monsters, when they were defeated, weren't tracking correctly during the raids. That's fixed. We were missing quite a lot of collisions on some of the objects, including the monsters, and a couple of terrain as well. Some of the tiles were missing collisions, so you couldn't build on them. That's fixed. Another thing is that NPCs will try and leave if there's no shelter available, or if the island is closed and there's a disaster. They'll just try and leave the island. They won't just stay where they were, which is what they were doing before. They would just stay at the building that they were at if there was no shelter, but now they'll try and leave. Islands, so at the very top of, let's say, our canvas, at the very top on the right, in the level, somewhere around here, we would have icons that appear if you could build on land. That's pretty much pointless now because we do have the blueprint selection functionality on buildings now, which allows us to see where you can place them. So the icons were pretty much pointless. They were really for the previous iteration of the game. Now we also have different tree types for levels, specific levels, so I'll show that off now. And the last thing I want to say is that the camera angles has now changed. Rather than it being at 80 degrees, it's now 70, so you can see a little bit more of an angle. And also some of the textures on some of the terrain has changed, including the grass and the flowers. Okay, so anyway, let's get into this. So another thing I want to quickly show is the levels, and that's really what we want to get to, the main thing today. So you can see this is our levels. I've got them currently all unlocked because these I've tested them to see if they can actually complete them, and these come up if you can complete them. Obviously this one isn't, and if it's not available, it'll actually say locked on it, so you won't be able to select it at all. Of course, you can delete all your saves by just selecting them right here. Now, all of our levels do have descriptions, and the only levels I am going to show is probably up to maybe the jagged stone isle. I don't really want to show any other levels because I don't want to give away what they are. However, you can kind of read them here and kind of get a good grasp of it. I might show them the different types of trees that can spawn, just very briefly. Anyway, for now, let's jump into our starter island, our tutorial. So you see that stones have got a little bit more edge onto them. The grass is a little bit different. It's not as cluttered as it was before. It's a little bit more smooth. Not as many trees as well, so it's a bit cleaner. I think so anyway. And when you complete this and you complete all the objectives, you'll be able to move on. I just wanted to show what this looks like. Now if we quickly come back out here, You'll also see our green lush island, which is our standard lush. I believe it has the standard trees on it. I will show the other two islands just so I can show the different types of trees. So as you can see right here, we got our basic island. It's still our standard trees, but a lot more of these special trees which you can't destroy. You can see it looks slightly different. That's that. You can see that the camera is slightly angled as well, which I think adds to it. Same with the jagged stone. Slight changes to the look of it. Now the description on the main menu will actually give a short description on the potential difficulties of the island, and whether that's the objectives, the area that you're going to be building on, or perhaps something more like disasters that you got to be aware of. There's also a bunch of new objectives that are being tracked for the later levels, things like that are related to disasters, and some of the later stuff as well. And that's just to add a little bit of variation to individual levels and how you're going to build on. Now again, just for the sake of showing what the trees look like, that jagged doesn't have has the standard trees up to this point. Now we get to the broken chains, which you're going to see a very different type of trees that are spawning. So over here you can see that we've got a very different type of tree. This is more of a tropic tree, so more palms that are spawning that's similar to the sand. And this and a little bit more plain right here, and this is the chained one, obviously with the extensions, and they have unique objectives to this area. But we've also, it's more so just a quick look at it. I don't want to show too much, so I'm just going to move on. Next we have the Lost Isle, which is going to show a more jungle aspect of trees. I call it more swamp trees, but it looks more jungly, a little bit more like low bearing trees, and you'll see that in a second. Very much matches what we're going for. So as you can see, this is the Lost Isle. You can see that we got a very unique tree right here. It's very different. Much more hard to see through, much more lush, and yeah, again we have all the extensions that you'll expansions that you'll have to get as well. And then we have this really difficult one, which is the Challenger, which I'm going to very briefly show that as well, and that has also got a unique tree as well. So right here we got, let's just move over here so you can see this. So we've got birch trees, much more smaller, much more unique, and a little bit more vibrant to the standard green, and that's what this area has. So anyway, let's move back to our main menu. And I don't want to give anything away to these the open plateaus and the crown and the crystal crater, but just in hindsight, in order to unlock these, you're going to have to complete these one by one. So with every single one of these completed, the next level will unlock until you get to the sandbox-esque map. Now sandbox doesn't mean that everything's free. You do have an objective, which is to get to 5 stars, but you can build however you like. There's no objective apart from that. So apart from getting to level to 5 stars, you don't need to worry about how you're going to accomplish that. It's completely up to you how you want to build. There's no objectives that tie you to build in a certain way. And yeah, that's it. So this is all working. I just don't have an icon for it yet, but as you can see, we got our icon, our description, and our title on these. So these are all finished, completely done, and there's still a little bit more work that needs to be done on the sandbox ones, but they're mostly completed. So what's the next big thing now? So we come back to this, and I want to just show what we got right here, the objective system. So objectives are done, so we can tick that off. Dialogue, I fixed some on the main tutorial, but I haven't added them to other levels simply because I just don't have time for it, and you pretty much have learned everything in the very beginning. In the very tutorial island, there's no need for more dialogue, I feel like. So that I'm considering that done as well. And then what we have right here is our campaign levels, which I consider them now completely done, just not optimized yet. And then we have our sandbox, which are functional and they're almost satisfactory. I just need to do some slight changes to some of them, just to make them a little bit nicer, and they're done. Now we come down to the asset organization, which I usually do towards the end of levels and things, but I might do that soon just to try and reorganize. Chances are I'm not going to add any new scripts, any new assets now. I'm pretty much set with the assets, so I feel like it's probably worth I can just reorganize this. And then we got these settings, which is usually the last thing I do because you never know, levels can always have more settings included. So that's going to be probably the last thing I work on in the entire game. So now we come down to all of this right here. Now, I said I was going to work on this part next, all the dungeon parts, but I really want to get this whole of these overworld levels, the menu and things done completely. Like, nothing needs to be worked on them before I move on, because this is where the player is going to probably spend most of their time. So, I'm going to start optimizing, cleaning it up, and getting it to the release version. And I think that won't take too long. I've already started on the optimization for some of them. Some of them can't be optimized. I've already optimized them quite a lot. Some of them I have some good ideas for how to optimize, but hopefully that'll be most of it done very, very soon. I'm just going to end it there because that's mostly all that I've done. The thing is I've done a lot. I've done a whole lot of levels. However, I don't want to show too much of them. I really want the player to be able to explore them, and so I might do a separate series where I just play through the levels in my own time. But for now, I'm just going to consider that it. So this has been ProTaleDev, and I'll see you next time.